Hello, everyone.
Hello, everybody. Okay, I have this book here. Hopefully that's coming out clearly. It is The Art of War by Sun Tzu. I actually have three different translations of this. So this is The Art of War, edited and with a foreword by James Clavell. Fortunately, I don't have it on PDF, so I can't read along with it. Okay, so the foreword. Sun Tzu wrote this extraordinary book in China 2,500 years ago. It begins, the art of war is of vital importance to the state. It is a matter of life and death, a road either to safety or to ruin. Hence, under no circumstances can it be neglected. It ends. Hence, it is only the enlightened ruler and the wise general who will use the highest intelligence of the army for the purposes of spying, and thereby they achieve great results. Spies are a most important element in a war because upon them depends an army's ability to move. I truly believe that if our military and political leaders in recent times had studied this work of genius, Vietnam could not have happened as it happened. We would not have lost the war in Korea. We lost because we did not achieve victory. The Bay of Pigs could not have occurred. The hostage fiasco in Iran would not have come to pass. The British Empire would not have been dismembered. And in all probability, World War I and II would have been avoided. Certainly, they would not have been waged as they were waged, and the millions of youths obliterated unnecessarily and stupidly by monsters calling themselves generals would have lived out their lives. Supreme excellence consists in breaking the enemy's resistance without fighting. I find it astounding that Sun Tzu wrote so many truths 25 centuries ago that are still applicable today, especially in his chapter on the use of spies, which I find extraordinary. I think this little book shows clearly what is still being done wrong and why our present opponents are so successful in some areas. Sun Tzu is obligatory reading in the Soviet political military hierarchy and has been available in Russia for centuries. It is also almost word for word the source of all Mao Zedong's Little Red Book's strategic and tactical doctrine. Even more importantly, I believe The Art of War shows quite clearly how to take the initiative and combat the enemy, any enemy. Sun Tzu wrote, if you know the enemy and know yourself, you need not fear the result of 100 battles. Like Machiavelli's The Prince and Miyamoto's Musashi's The Book of Five Rings, Sun Tzu's truths contained herein can equally show the way to victory in all kinds of ordinary business conflicts, boardroom battles, and then the day-to-day fight for survival we all endure. Even in the battle of the sexes, they are all forms of war, all fought under the same rules, his rules. The first time I ever personally heard about Sun Tzu was at the races in Happy Valley in Hong Kong in 1977. A friend, P.J. Williams, a steward of the Jockey Club, asked me if I had ever read the book. I said no, and he told me that he would be happy to send me a copy the next day. When the book arrived, I left it unread. Then one day, weeks later, I picked it up. I was totally shocked that in all my reading about Asia, about Japan and China particularly, I had not come across this book before. Since that time, it had been a constant companion for me. So much so that during the course of the writing of Noble House, many of the characters in it refer to Sun Tzu in all his glory. I think his work is fantastic, hence this version of his book. Unfortunately, little is known of the man himself or of when he wrote the 13 chapters. Some ascribe them to approximately 500 BC in the kingdom of Wu, some to approximately 300 BC. About 100 BC, one of his chroniclers, Sima Qian, gives this biography. Sun Tzu, whose personal name was Wu, was a native of the Qi state. His art of war brought him to the notice of Ho Lu, king of Wu. Ho Lu said to him, "I have carefully perused your 13 chapters. May I submit your theory of managing soldiers to a slight test?" Sun Tzu replied, "You may." The king asked, "May the test be applied to women?" The answer was again in the affirmative. So arrangements were made to bring 180 ladies out of the palace. Sun Tzu divided them into two companies and placed one of the king's favorite concubines at the head of each. He then made them all take spears in their hands and address them thus: "I presume you know the difference between front and back, right hand and left hand?" The girls replied, "Yes." Sun Tzu went on, "When I say eyes front, you must look straight ahead. When I say left turn, you must face toward your left hand. When I say right turn, you must face toward your right hand. When I say about turn, you must face right around toward the back." Again, the girls assented. The words of command having been thus explained, he set up the halberds and battle axes in order to begin the drill. Then, to the sound of drums, he gave the order, "Right turn," but the girls only burst out laughing. Sun Tzu said patiently, "If words of command are not clear and distinct, if orders are not thoroughly understood, then the general is to blame." He started drilling them again, and this time gave the order, "Left turn," whereupon the girls once more burst into fits of laughter. Then he said, "If words of command are not clear and distinct, if orders are not thoroughly understood, the general is to blame. But if his orders are clear and the soldiers nevertheless disobey, then it is the fault of their officers." So saying, he ordered the leaders of the two companies to be beheaded. Now the king of Wu was watching from the top of a raised pavilion when he saw that his favorite concubines were about to be executed. He was greatly alarmed and hurried down the following message: "We are now quite satisfied as to our general's ability to handle troops. If we are bereft of these two concubines, our meat and drink will lose their savor. It is our wish that they shall not be beheaded." Sun Tzu replied even more patiently. Having once received His Majesty's commission to be general of his forces, there are certain commands of His Majesty which, acting in that capacity, I am unable to accept. Accordingly, and immediately, he had the two leaders beheaded and straightway installed the pair next in order as leaders in their place. When this had been done, the drum was sounded for the drill once more. The girls went through all the evolutions, turning to the right or the left, marching ahead or wheeling about, kneeling or standing with perfect accuracy and precision, not venturing to utter a sound. Then Sun Tzu sent a messenger to the king, saying, "Your soldiers, sire, are now properly drilled and disciplined and ready for your Majesty's inspection. They can be put to any use that their sovereign may desire. Bid them go through fire and water, and they will now not disobey." But the king replied, "Let our general cease drilling and return to camp. That for us, we have no wish to come down and inspect the troops." Thereupon Sun Tzu said calmly, "The king is only fond of words and cannot translate them into deeds." After that, the king of Wu saw that Sun Tzu was one who knew how to handle an army and appointed him general. In the West, Sun Tzu defeated the Chu state and forced his way into Ying, the capital. To the north, he put fear into the states of Qi and Qin, and spread his fame abroad among the feudal princes, and Sun Tzu shared in the might of the kingdom. So Sun Tzu became a general for the king of Wu. For almost 2 decades, the armies of Wu were victorious over their hereditary enemies, the kingdom of Yue and Chu. Sometime within this period, Sun Tzu died, and his patron, the king of Wu, was killed in a battle. For a few years, his descendants followed the precepts of Sun Tzu and continued to be victorious. And then they forgot. In 473 BC, the armies of Wu were defeated and the kingdom made extinct. In 1782, the art of war was first translated into French by a Jesuit, Father Amiot. There is a legend that this little book was Napoleon's key to success and his secret weapon. Certainly his battles depended upon mobility, and mobility is one of the things that Sun Tzu stresses. Certainly Napoleon used all of Sun Tzu to his own advantage to conquer most of Europe. It was only when he failed to follow Sun Tzu's rules that he was defeated. The art of war was not translated into English until 1905. The first English translation was by P.F. Calthrop. The second, the one that you will read here, is by Lionel Giles, originally published in Shanghai and London in 1910. I have taken a few liberties with this translation to make it a little more accessible. Any translation from ancient Chinese to another language is to a certain extent a point of view, and have inserted some of Gillies' notes according to the Chinese method, immediately after the passage to which they refer. I have also, for simplicity, deliberately eliminated all accents over Chinese names and places. It is really almost impossible to translate the Chinese sounds of a character into Roman lettering. Again, for simplicity, I've used the old-fashioned method of spelling. Let all scholars, great and small, please excuse me. I sincerely hope you enjoy reading this book. Sun Tzu deserves to be read. I would like to make the art of war obligatory study for all of our serving officers and men, as well as for all politicians and all people in government and all high schools and universities in the free world. If I were a commander-in-chief or president or prime minister, I would go further. I would have written into law that all officers, particularly all generals, take a yearly oral and written examination on these 13 chapters, the passing mark being 95%. Any general failing to achieve a pass to be automatically and summarily dismissed without appeal, and all other officers to have automatic demotion. I believe very much that Sun Tzu's knowledge is vital to our survival. It can give us the protection we need to watch our children grow in peace and thrive. Always remember, since ancient times, it has been known that the true object of war is peace. James Clavell. Anybody who has supervised people knows how challenging it is. Anybody who's been in the military knows how difficult it is to supervise people once you've been in the military. Because in the military, there is a chain of command. And while there's politics and everything, rank does have its privileges. And while in bigger companies, that is also true, I guess emotions and being politically correct and having to be sensitive to people's feelings and needs in the private sector are much more of an issue. The other thing that I've learned is that in the end, as a leader, you can't be something you're not. that's something that you can study. You can take Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People and his courses. You could study Sun Tzu. You can study these other people, and you can learn different techniques, and you can improve your patience, and you can learn to delegate, and you can learn to identify talent. And experience over time definitely teaches you quite a bit on a lot of different things. And unlike warfare, where if you lose, you're killed, if you're in business and you lose your job or you lose your company, you technically can fight another day and you can learn those lessons and move on. And over time, you do learn those lessons. I can tell you that I have, it's funny that this book starts with that story about the concubines being executed, because I've always had the term that when you're supervising professionals who are self-motivated and don't need a lot of monitoring, it's such a savings of time. I remember when I worked for a large defense contractor, and it was like kindergarten class, and you'd have to waste your time trying to get them just to do their jobs. And you're dealing with adults who are sometimes twice as old as you, right? And you have them to be like, come on, guys, can we work today, right? When I went to work for smaller companies, you tend to have a lot more authoritative control. And so sometimes I would have what's called what I would refer to as a public execution, because sometimes the only thing that would get people moving is to either terminate somebody, which is never fun, or to discipline somebody. And sometimes you have to do it publicly, as unpleasant as that is, because then that unpleasant experience motivates everybody else for a certain period of time before you have to do it all over again. It really is ridiculous. And in our country, the United States, this is what our country's become. I remember, back when my father was in the workforce, most people were military people, and you didn't have to deal with this, at least not like you do today. Back then, people are people, but I mean, back then, people were used to that type of structure, and things ran like a military unit. And also back then, there were a lot, not saying women weren't involved in that, but a lot of the hierarchy was men who had that military experience. Today, it's a different world. Today, I don't think most people could handle that type of environment. I think people would be like, wow, this place sucks. This place is too regimented for me. It's too hard. I think people want a fun environment today. I don't know. It depends. But when you're a small business, it really is warfare. It really is. You have to be on all cylinders to compete. And especially if you go up against the Chinese, I mean, having to compete on price at all or service, it can get very difficult. So, Chapter 1, Laying Plans. Sun Tzu said, "The art of war is of vital importance to the state. It is a matter of life and death. a road either to safety or to ruin. Hence, under no circumstances can it be neglected. The art of war is governed by 5 constant factors, all of which need to be taken into account. They are the moral law, heaven, earth, the commander, method, and discipline. The moral law causes the people to be in complete accord with their ruler, so that they will follow him regardless of their lives, undismayed by any danger. Heaven signifies night and day, cold and heat, times and seasons. Earth comprises distances, great and small, danger and security, open ground and narrow passes, the chances of life and death. The commander stands for the virtues of wisdom, sincerity, benevolence, courage, and strictness. By method and discipline are to be understood the marshaling of the army and its proper subdivisions, the gradations of rank among the officers, the maintenance of roads by which supplies may be reached the army, and the control of military expenditure. These 5 factors should be familiar to every general. He who knows them will be victorious. He who knows them not will fail. Therefore, when seeking to determine your military conditions, make your decisions on the basis of a comparison in this wise. Which of the 2 sovereigns is imbued with the moral law? Which of the 2 generals has the most ability? With whom lie the advantages derived from heaven and earth? On which side is discipline most vigorously enforced? Tu Mu alludes to the remarkable story of Cao, who was such a strict disciplinarian that once, in accordance with his own severe regulations against injury to standing crops, he condemned himself to death for having allowed his horse to stray into a field of corn. However, in lieu of losing his head, he was persuaded to satisfy his sense of justice by cutting off his hair. When you lay down a law, see that it is not disobeyed. If it is disobeyed, the offender must be put to death. Which army is the stronger? On which side are officers and men more highly trained? In which army is there the most absolute certainty that merit will be properly rewarded and misdeeds summarily punished? By means of these 7 considerations, I can forecast victory or defeat. The general who hearkens to my counsel and acts upon it will conquer. Let such a one be retained in command. The general who hearkens not to my counsel nor acts upon it will suffer defeat. Let such a one be dismissed. But remember, while heeding the profit of my counsel, avail yourself also of any helpful circumstances over and beyond the ordinary rules, and modify your plans accordingly. All warfare is based on deception. Hence, when able to attack, we must seem unable. When using our forces, we must seem inactive. When we are near, we must make the enemy believe we are far away. When far away, we must make him believe we are near. Hold out baits to entice the enemy, feign disorder, and crush him. If he is secure at all points, be prepared for him. If he is in superior strength, evade him. If your opponent is of choleric temper, seek to irritate him. Pretend to be weak, that he may grow arrogant. If he is taking his ease, give him no rest. If his forces are united, separate them. Attack him where he is unprepared. Appear where you are not expected. The general who wins a battle makes many calculations in his temple before the battle is fought. The general who loses a battle makes but few calculations beforehand. Thus do many calculations lead to victory, and few calculations to defeat. How much more? No calculation at all. It is by attention to this point that I can foresee who is likely to win or lose. That is the end of chapter 1. Until next time. Peace.